Okay, so we have gone live. So welcome, Sahana Vijayakumar, the author of Kashira, and it is a pleasure to talk to you. And I'm Rajat Mitra. I'm the author of the book Infidel Next Door, and we have both written a book on Kashmir and Kashmiri Hindus and what they have gone through. So it will be a discussion on about our experiences as two authors, and I'm sure that we will find many things common and some things uncommon. So, but in this, both we have a passion for writing about Kashmir, Kashmiri Hindus, and the Kashmir situation, what it has done to the Hindu population over there. That's what we would talk about. So, welcome to all, and thanks to Garuda Prakashan for organizing this. They're organizing author exchanges and talks of a very different kind, I must say, which do not get much publicity or awareness. So, this is a very welcome effort on their part, and my thanks to the whole team who have organized it. So, my first question to you, Sahana, would be that I listed out the questions. It was first published in 2018, am I right?
Correct.
And it was nearly 3 decades, as I understand, after the genocide of Kashmiri Hindus. Almost 3 decades because it started
Right.
in 99. And you say that when our government of the past have given credence to separatists by engaging in a dialogue, I would like to understand why did you feel the need to write this book and open past wounds? In fact, that is a question I would also like to answer after you are finished, because it is common to all of us. Yeah.
Yeah. Namaste, and thank you so much for having given the quick introduction. And it's really good to talk to you because, as you rightly said, we have two different perspectives given our backgrounds. So I am an IT professional, and I've just learned that you are a psychologist. So you bring a very new uh, perspective into it, a very new interpretation, a very different one, and I have treated it quite differently. So, what inspired me is, as you asked just now, the sort of wound that has been given to us. It's not an ordinary one. It does not heal so easily or so soon because it's been 30 years since the Kashmiri Hindu community has been displaced, and we are still figuring out a way as to how do we send them back. I mean, there is no solution that has come up, and we all seem to forget the impact that has happened on them. So they've lost a generation. During the period they were in exile, they lived in tents, they lived in very pathetic situations. Many died because of the snake bites, many could not bear the heat of Jammu, given the fact that they were coming from a place like Kashmir. So this wound is not going to be healed definitely. And what are we trying to do? We probably rely more on the government, on the administration. We are expecting them to play a very great and an important role, which is sadly not happening. So there seems to be a nexus between the government and the separatists, which is always kind of trying to sideline or suppress or even don't show the problem in its full nature. And the media is also contributing a lot. There's only a Kashmiriyat which is cooked up by them, and the real plight is always in the backstage or in the background. So all these things prompted me to look at this a bit closely, for which I had to travel, or in fact I wanted to, and I traveled to Kashmir. So this was the biggest driver for me. And as you said, for you, I think there's a psychological aspect also. So it'll be great if you can elaborate on that.
Okay, it is a psychological aspect, personal aspect, and I would also say a spiritual aspect. I am, let me say this, I'm a Western trained psychologist. I'm a Harvard alumni, and I studied psychology as it is taught in Harvard, which is very reductionistic and looking at people, everything in a different way, very far removed from the world of what happened in Kashmir. So I was not aware of this, of what had happened in Kashmir. till I married a Kashmiri woman. And my wife is Kashmiri, she's a Kashmiri Hindu. And it was at that time that when I started talking to her relatives, her friends, in the family, I became aware of the fact that they had run away from Kashmir. They had a home in Ranawari. In fact, it was known as one of the biggest homes, which was just on the side of the lake, the tallest home, and it was taken over. First of all, they ran away. It was partially burned down. Then the militants occupied it, and they built their lower court on the on the ground floor, the high court on the second floor, and on the seventh floor they built the Supreme Court. So the three courts where they dispensed justice to people they caught was given in that house from which my wife's family had run away, right? Then it was, we got to know because someone who escaped from there came and told that. And that is the time I learned about it. Then it was occupied by I wouldn't say occupied, it was, they were removed there by our military who took over. And they built their, watchtower over there. And that is the time I became aware of the Kashmiri dimension of the problem. And at the request of several people, we started working in the Kashmiri refugee camps for many years. We still maintain our contact with that, and that is the time I became aware of the stories that I heard over there. And one particular story appealed to me very much. There was this man who told me that this camp is Aurangzeb's dream, which meant that Aurangzeb had a dream of making Kashmir all free of Hindus, and they were the last batch to run away. So they have made Aurangzeb's dream come alive. So when I heard that, it somewhere struck me that what I'm hearing is transgenerational trauma. So, and as a clinician, I was used to writing one-page report for United Nations. And I realized that the trauma is so vast that I cannot write a case-by-case report. I have to write a story. And people shared their story, and I felt that it needed a psychological dimension. Like there were already many books on Kashmir, and there will be many. I want that there should be many books because the more books are there, the more people will become aware of it. So I decided to write a book on the psychological dimension of it, and that is the time I decided to write Infidel Next Door, which is my book. So I think that is answering your question, Sahana. Yeah.
Yes, yes, that's really very interesting. I mean, you have the first-hand stories that have been told to you, and you have seen those experiences. So the characters Anwar, Adia, and Ziba,
Aditya.
all
Aditya.
these, yeah, are all these a result of all those experiences, or how have you tried to fictionalize them?
Yes, they are both fictional and they are both true. Like, I would like to share with you that I used to work in Delhi's Tihar prisons, and there was this man, young man, who was a very good stone thrower. So, patharbaz. So he became friends with me, and he showed me his stone throwing skills. So, and he had this belief that every stone that he picks up from the ground takes the power of 10 bullets and will drive India out of it, out of the land of Kashmir. So Anwar's character is based upon that. And he said, I don't have any problem with the Hindu brothers, sisters, anyone. I only have a problem that this land should be pure. It should only belong to, us. Nobody else should be here. So Anwar's character is based upon that, what I learned from him, his passion, his thing for believing erroneously what he thought as freedom, and his exclusionist nature that only the Muslims should live in Kashmir, nobody else. And that's the time I learned that the Kashmir problem is a religious problem. It is not an economic problem. It is not anything, but nobody talks about it. Aditya is a character who symbolizes all Hindus. He goes back to his temple, which was destroyed 300 years back, and tries to build it again. So he symbolizes all Hindus in the process, who are facing a resurgence of memory right now. And Zeba is the character who somewhere feels torn between her love for Aditya and also feels a loyalty towards her people, her own self. So she's torn apart. So they three symbolize the three Indian uh, perspectives, which I would say out of many on Kashmir. So they symbolize different aspects of ourselves. And many people who have read this say that they see themselves in the book, particularly Kashmiri Hindus and Muslims. Yeah. So I have a question for you, which I wrote. It is that your book touches upon many dimensions of the Kashmiri issue: the socio-cultural, the religious history, and the political complexities. So, what is the primary message you want to convey through your book, Sahana?
There is no message, to be very honest, because it has so many faces. I mean, for us, for some of us, or for most of us in South India, the awareness is very less. We hardly know anything about Kashmir. All that we know is we are thrown a bunch of stone pelters each time, and we just look at it in the media. Apart from that, we knew very less. So, but one of the significant things about Kashmir is it has a very rich heritage. It is culturally so rich. It used to be the knowledge center of India. We have the Vidyapeeth, the Sharda Peeth, which also had a Vidyapeeth adjoining it, probably a mile from the place. Right now, it's in the POK, Pak Occupied Kashmir. So there was this cultural history to it. There was this social reason also. The reason why the Pandits and the Hindus were sent from there, the Exodus, and also the political reasoning behind it. Because the very first book I remember I took up to read on this subject was My Frozen Turbulence by Sri Jagmohanji, who just passed away. He had been the governor of Kashmir twice. It's quite a huge book, and he has recorded all the facts, I mean, word to word, with all the references. That was the first step I took in understanding the political things there, and that is what actually prompted me to visit the place. He has written it in such a great detail, and then I got to know through that there is a very good religious history. And the main thing that attracted me, or kind of intrigued me, was the philosophical difference between our Sanatana Dharma and Islam. I've happened to read the life of the Prophet of Islam and the very predatory nature of these Abrahamic religions. That has always disturbed me, and I thought it very important to do this philosophical comparison. So that's when the Shankaracharya ji's episode also has come up. I mean, that's the opening chapter where the current priest, Hridayanath Pandit, in his dream sees the image of the past, that there's this discourse happening, philosophical discourse, where Shankaracharya ji has visited from the south. So Kashmir did have the connect from various places, and all this was important. So I just wanted to blend all of these and kind of show that it's not a simple geographical place. I mean, it's not any other place. Every place in India has its own history, and it's very rich in so many aspects. But Kashmir is unique, and I just wanted to blend all of those, and I've tried to give a collective picture.
Okay. I think that's a very important thing that you said. And you have used the word genocide in the Exodus of Kashmiri Pandits. The studies on genocide show that the roots of genocide go back decades, even centuries, right? For
Right.
example, if you see the Jewish genocide, the roots of that go back to almost 2,000 years, when anti-Semitism reigned supreme for all these years, and it still is there, right? So uh, the roots of genocide goes back centuries. It's not something that happens in a day. So similarly for other genocides, if we see the Armenian genocide or the genocide in Rwanda, they all have roots which go back to a long time where deep fissures exist. So I have found in my work that there exist such deep fissures. It existed between the Hindus and the Muslims over there. So is this something that you would like to comment about what you find as the roots of genocide in Kashmir?
Yeah, as I said, the very nature of the religion that only my God is true or only my belief is true. Now, you were quoting the example of the person, the stone pelter, whom you met in Tihar jail. When I was in Kashmir, I also met the head of these stone pelters. There was this guy who used to organize, get a bunch of guys and to do the stone pelting. What I could not comprehend is, as you were also pointing out, they have no problem with the Hindu brothers, they have no problem with the Hindu community staying there, and at the same time, they want a Nizam-e Mustafa, and at the same time, they want Islam to prevail. Now, how do these two things go together? They don't admit openly that they don't want Hindus. I mean, they don't admit that the very uh, what do you call, the basic rule of Islam is uh, Allah is the only God, and the very famous statement. So how do they take both? I think they are very confused. I just want to know your opinion also on that, because I have spoken to a lot of folks there, and they just try to say it's okay if they are there, let them stay in one corner of Kashmir, let there be a separate area. I mean, that is the ask of many of the communities that are fighting. But what these folks want is, let them go back to their homes, let them come back to where they were, the remote villages, be it Srinagar or any other place. Let them stay there peacefully. We'll still continue to vent our anger upon the administration. Now, won't you cause any harm to them? They say no. But at the same time, this has to be an Islamic place. How do they go together at all?
Uh, Yeah, I think it's a very important issue that no genocide, no mass exodus is possible without the complicity of the population. Say, for example, the Nazis, there were only between 20 to 25% of the population, but the rest, 75% Germany, it was not Nazi, but yet they kept quiet and they supported the Nazis, right? So, in the same way, if you see here, the exodus, the throwing out of the Kashmiri Hindus could not have been possible without the complicity of the population per se. Without their support, it could not have taken place. In fact, one of the things that I have heard many times is that when the Kashmiri Hindus were running away, how it was a celebratory air in
Yes.
Srinagar at that time. People came out sometimes in their best clothes, they burst crackers. It was a great event. The Kashmiri Hindus are running away. Nobody tried to stop them. And if the whole population there had come forward and say, no, don't go, they would not have left. But it is the very ordinary Kashmiri Muslim who wanted them to leave, who wanted that they go away so that his property can be taken over, so that the land can be totally ours. So it was a mass connived, mass complicit, program that was held. It was not something by a few terrorists or by a few misguided elements that led to the exodus of a whole population. And now you began your talk, Sahana, by talking about that, whether they will go back or not. Now, if we see the history of exile, there are very few people who once exiled have been able to go back. Very few. I mean, most of the people, they have gone, settled down, and they have tried to build, a place which they try to call home. And one of the statements in my book, which I write about, which someone commented, is that I mean, you can build a shelter, but your home always remains the original place from where you ran away. So a shelter always remains a shelter. It never becomes a home. So I may go tomorrow, I may be thrown out of my land. go and build some house, even three, four generations may live there, but still it doesn't become my home. Like many blacks in USA, they consider Africa their home. Many people who have had to run away because of political compulsions still feel that the country from where they ran away, that remains their original home, right? But whether they will be able to go back, say, even in 100 years, 200 or 500 years, we don't know. So when a lot of people ask that whether they will be able to go back or not, my answer is that please read the history of exiles. Very few, almost 99%, have not been able to go back, right? And today you are scattered, spread all over the world. Where is that compulsion in you to go back? Where is that compulsion in you to reclaim and go ahead and take over that land? So the only answer which I believe is that it is not just Kashmiri Hindus, but like all citizens of India, everybody should go over and stay over in that land and take it. Like my
Yeah.
wife, who's a Kashmiri Hindu, when she married me, she lost that right to buy
Right.
land over there.
Yeah.
Now she has that. And she
Hmm.
says that we must take this opportunity to buy a land because it's a part of our heritage. I want my children to know that this is where we came from. So I think that that spirit must rise in the Kashmiri Hindu to do that. That's what I feel. That's the only answer. And that is for all Hindus, not just Kashmiri Hindus. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I think with the 370 getting abrogated, it has opened doors for all this, for people to go and buy lands, etc. Isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's been a step in the right direction. When I talk to people that my wife could not buy land over there after marrying me, so some joke about it. So say, well, she married you, she lost that, right. And the others say we were not aware of it. Now, that's something that surprises me about Indians, about our own country, about the people of our country. How come they are not aware of such discriminations that are openly there? And that is something that Garuda Prakashan is writing about, the present generation of Hindus is talking about, and I wish that you do. So when you told me that you are an IT professional, I felt very good. I say, hey, this is great. An IT professional and a psychologist are talking together about a topic with which they have literally no connection. But it is because we feel an injustice over there that we two both have from very different backgrounds are coming
Yes.
together and talking about it.
Yes, yes. And this should have happened long back. And regarding 370, almost nobody knew. I mean, in my immediate circles, when I said I have researched and I'm about to go, everybody wanted me to not go to that place, that God-forsaken place. Why do you
Yeah.
have to visit? Because this was 3 years ago and I was just going there all by myself. So only after I went there and I spoke to one good scholar by name Dr. Kailash Panditaji, who kind of led me to many other details. And I have written or dedicated a chapter on 370 in the novel. So people can get to know on what is exactly happening. And the day it was abrogated, so many of my readers, Kannada, this was a bestseller, and many people thanked me for writing this in such a great detail. And on the day it was abrogated, my Facebook was flooded with messages that okay, we've achieved something. So I was
Yeah.
very happy that there's at least a little awareness that I could create, because
Yeah.
writing a chapter on 370 looks very technical for a fictional work, for a novel, but I found no other way. I just couldn't put it through dialogues because these are very complex matters. So it's like it gets published in a newspaper. That's the technique I've made use of. And I just had to. I remembered that when you said about not being able to buy the land and your wife losing the right to. Yeah. So it was so much. What do you call? Everything was hidden. None of
Yeah.
these things were being discussed in the mainstream, and our history textbooks are, I think, the worst way of showing history to our children. It doesn't mention Lalita Aditya. It doesn't mention anything to do with Kashmir. There's hardly any reference found. So,
Yeah. In fact, very true. And I would mention to you that my father-in-law, he when he learned that I'm writing a book on Kashmir, he told me two things. He said that one, in the year 1956 when he had done his BSc,
Hmm.
and he had he had applied for BSc. When he went to check the results, he had scored top marks because his father was known as a mathematician of Kashmir. They were a family of very educated people. That's what all Kashmiri Hindus are. So when he went to check his name, and he was looking at the ranking, he found that his name is not there. What he found was that the list of people who had been admitted, they were all Muslim names, and below that was written a separate list for Hindu candidates will be maybe put up if deemed necessary. So he said, "Do you think this can happen in independent India and nobody protests?" That is the day he left Kashmir. I mean, they then no, they went and actually spoke to the chief minister, all the Kashmiri Hindus, and he said, "You have the whole India to go and study. Why do you want to? Why you people want to study here?" So I want to ask that. Wasn't the ordinary Kashmiri Muslim, the government, everybody complicit, which led to the exodus of 89 and 90? So, I mean, to say that the separate list of Hindu candidates will be, published later. So he used to talk about this, that why he left Kashmir and why he never really went back, doesn't want to go back. The second thing he told me was about Bat Mazar. It's an island on the Dal Lake,
Yeah.
and used to say that whenever they would go, the boatman would never stop there. And I have written about the chapter. Incidentally, the publisher whom I first went to wanted this chapter to be deleted so he could publish it. So he talked about how no boatman would stop at Batmazar, and they had instructions that whenever you are going with people, never stop over there because they used to go by boat to different locations. So I said, "Why haven't you talked about it? Why doesn't the rest of India know?" He said, "Because no, the rest of India doesn't care." Then the third incident I would like to tell you, he was a civil engineer, a very reputed civil engineer who designed many top buildings. He told me that when he visited the temples of Kashmir, he found that how they were broken down by creating heat inside. He gave me the details of it. And that is what made me aware of the destruction of temples in India and how it has been a major way in which to destroy Hindu civilization and culture. You
Yeah.
destroy the temples because the temples were the centers where people got together. So I
Yes.
asked him, I said, the destruction of all the temples in Kashmir, how did it affect, you think, the Kashmiri Hindus? So he said, well, I think of only one difference, and that is that Kashmiri Hindus pray inside their houses. The rest of if you see in the south, for example, whenever there is a Hindu festival, people still come out on the roads. They go
Yes.
out, they celebrate. But in Kashmir, in many parts of North India, you celebrate inside the home, you don't come out. So that is what really happened to us. And I call it terror. I call it that how a religion was pushed into terror so that people would not even dare to come out and pray. So all the Kashmiri festivals are held inside the home. They are not held inside outside the house. They don't gather outside. They don't show their faces. So the terror still remains. And that is
Yes.
what is known as transgenerational trauma. It is a term from psychology which has been, used of late to study societies which have gone through trauma and torture, and it seems how the generation after generation trauma is passed on. So that is what I see is very much a characteristic of our Hindu population, that the trauma is getting passed on from generation to generation, and a time will come when this will burst open like it is doing so right now. So I would like your views on that.
Yeah, yeah. So I had been to a settlement in Badgam district
Yeah.
where they have housed at least 1,000 Kashmiri Hindus. Now, the
Yeah.
mention of the job, the list that you just said, what happened is when many hundreds and thousands of these Kashmiris fled, all the positions were immediately filled with Muslims, it seems. And after a couple of years, some of them wanted to come back. They stayed in Jammu here and there. And in 2008, the rehabilitation program started. And 2009 or so, they started inviting applications. There was an age limit. They gave a concession, yes, but then most of the positions were taken up by Muslims, and these people applied, and whoever got selected or qualified, they were housed in 5 or 6 settlements in Kashmir across. And I just happened to visit one of them in Badgam, and I visited a few families, and they have the word trauma. It kind of reflects so much still that they have not been able to come out of it. They used to call those people Kabailis, the ones who did the initial assault on them, the
Yeah.
Muzaffarnagar thing. From then on, they recollect the horror, they remember, they are so depressed. The elders, especially, they cannot speak without tears in their eyes. So this has had a great impact, and now they are all working. I think they are very adamant about not letting go. That was what I saw. There was a sort of helplessness also, but they just want the person who hosted me there for a night. He said, "No, I'm not going to let go. It's okay. We are staying in a very closed boundary." I mean, you can imagine there are asbestos sheets that have been put up within their campus so that the stones aren't pelted. There's so much of security. They go out and they don't venture out. Forget festivals, even on the regular days they don't venture out unnecessarily, and they just go to their offices and they just come back. It's a panic every day. I mean, until they come back, the family, the women who are left behind aren't sure if their husbands are going to make it. So this is the situation of the settlement in Kashmir. And I also happened to visit the Jagti township in Jammu, and that's pathetic too.
Mhm.
I don't know if you have seen that place.
I have been there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, so there is so much of sacrifice that has already been made, but I still find it very courageous of those people who are still staying in Kashmir. I really applaud them for what. Yes, they have not got their homes; they are staying in a settlement. Very, what do you call? I mean, those houses are. I was told that in a single house, which had a living room and a bedroom, 2 to 3 families were made to stay when they began the settlement. Can you imagine a single bathroom, a single kitchen? They would divide it into two, just stone slabs for each family. They shared the place. 2, 3 families used to stay together, and over a period of time, now it has become such that each of them gets a family. But those houses are not even. It's something like we before we do the housewarming, the houses are not in a very good shape. So it's in a still a very raw state. It's not painted, and you can't imagine. So I don't know what is keeping them going on there, and they just want to be there. They don't want to let go. They're like, it's okay. We'll see. It might turn out well for us. So when you say that the exile is permanent, nothing is going to happen, or at least I feel very sorry for the people who have been struggling there so hard. And unless we make a collective effort of going with them, I mean, that's what I also sincerely feel. It's not only them who have to go back. Like Bangalore is flooded with people from various states. So is Delhi. So is Mumbai. I think Kashmir should become one such place. You open up some good industries, IT ventures, or anything for that matter, and let everybody go and flood that place. And I think that's how we can change the demography also.
Yeah, I think yes, I would say that the goal is change of demography, but more important than that, there is an issue of justice over here, right? How can you deprive a land of its people and say that nothing is happening? So for me, also, it's an issue of natural justice, that the people, the inhabitants of a land, should be able to go back and be able to stay there. And whole of India is one; it is not different. Like the Shama Prasad Mukherjee, he refused to get a permit for going to Kashmir because he said that it is as much my country as is Bengal. So this concept that it is something separate from India is abhorring. It is something that I can't even think about, right? And I think that it is time enough that we should go ahead and put it all together and say that it belongs to all of us, to all the
Yes.
Hindus, to all Muslims, to all religions, to all people, equally. So for me, it's a Hindu problem. It's a Hindu issue, and I see that somewhere the awareness needs to be there, that it's a transgenerational trauma. I've introduced this term for the Kashmiri Hindu community, and also to the Hindu community at large, at in many of my writings. I give very often an example in Delhi of Birla Temple. Are you familiar with Birla Temple,
Yes,
Sahana?
yes, yes,
Right. So I think what you know about Birla Temple is that it was built by the industrialist Birla,
yes,
right? But there is another story to it also. If you ask, is there another magnificent temple in Delhi before 1939? There is none. So, which means that for almost 1,000 years, there was no temple built. I mean, you have huge temples in the south, but there are no temples in Delhi for almost all this period. It was the first temple to be built in 1939, a temple of grandeur and magnificence. So, why did not Hindus build any temple? There are huge mosques. There are Jama Mosque, there is Sunhari Mosque. There are even churches. The oldest church in Delhi is 250 years old, which means that they could come the St. James Church in Kashmiri Gate. There are even some gurudwaras, but there is no Hindu who built his
mm,
temple. Even
mm,
though we had the Shilpa Shastra, we had the money, nobody dared to build a temple. Why? Why did nobody build any large temple in the capital of India for 1000 years, right? Now this is transgenerational trauma.
mm.
We were so scared of building a temple because we did not think that it's deemed. And the Mughal emperors, even the so-called people who are broad-minded, everything, there is no temple from Akbar's times, but there are mosques from his times, right?
Yeah,
So it
yeah,
means that somewhere no Hindu dared to build a temple. The
yeah,
fear, the terror only ended in 1939. And why did it end? Because the freedom movement what it was at its peak. Hindus
mm,
had again got together, they were collective, and they thought that we could build a temple, right? This temple was inaugurated by Gandhi.
mm. Yeah,
Came himself to inaugurate this because he knew the significance of it, right? Though it is not talked about. Now, my question is that when you visit Birla Temple, you don't see all this written over here. The children of our country do not know this history. They must know this to know how we have been ruled by terror for 1,000 years. That is the way for change to go forward to take place, and that is what I feel that the current changing of history textbooks should do, so that they write the true history of the destruction and how we were ruled by terror. The Jews did it. They have said that how they have been ruled by this feeling. The
mm.
Germans had talked about their shame of
Yeah,
what they have gone through after the Second
yeah,
World War, and that is what leads to the resurgence of a community, of a people per se. And I feel that something similar would also happen. And books like yours, like Kashira and mine, are probably a small step in that direction to create awareness for people. And I really hope and pray that many such writers like you come up, they write more books which create awareness for our people. The awareness uh, is not going to come from historians. The
mm,
awareness has been seen that when it has happened in society has come from people least connected with history. A psychologist and an IT professional have no connection to history, right? But
yeah,
it was our innate sense of asking for justice for our community, what has happened, that drew us to write about this. And I pray and hope that many such books like yours come up, your books gets wide publicity all across India, and people read about it to know that how our ancestors faced, how they went through their daily life. Yeah. So
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that was an very important comment that you made. But there's one serious thing that intrigues me. The term justice that you said, we
Mm.
cannot. It cannot be a one-way thing. I mean, we can demand for justice. In the case of Germans, they apologized, isn't it? They have all
Yeah.
these records in the concentration camps. I have visited some of them, and there is every photo or every audio clip. I mean, they are not ashamed of apologizing. So that cannot be expected from the community that we are dealing with. This is the reality that I could understand after going through many of the examples of their blunders in the history. I mean, it's simply predatory, and you cannot expect them to apologize. So, how is this even going? How is the justice even going to be meted out? Because at some point, they should say, yes, we were at fault. And I have spoken to many people in Kashmir, the stone pelters, the organizers of them, simple Kashmiri Muslims, merchants. I don't see that remorse. Either they say no, nothing of that sort happened. No, we did not ask them to go away. We were asking for justice for ourselves. We were demanding justice to be done for ourselves. Who asked them to go? They did not go. Now, they went by themselves. Jagmohan drew them out. So they give all these theories. But the thing is, there is no remorse. They don't say, I met only one person. I don't know if I can take his name. He's a professor in the University of Kashmir who was very apologetic. Just one person from among the many I spoke to. And he said, my parents chose not to go to masjid that day, that eventful day of 1990, January 19th, when the final calls were being given. And he pointed out an important thing. He said, males and females weren't jointly summoned to the masjids usually. It was only the men of the family who would go. But that afternoon, it was a Juma day, the Friday, everybody were asked to come. And my father decided that we are not going to go because my father knew what was happening. And his family did not go. The neighbors went and they were told that we are going to start a jihad. And this family did not participate. But the problem is, they could not do anything else either. I mean, they could not call up the police. They were very passive. That also helps in a way. But he was the only person who was apologetic. There's the other problem to this. They all say Islam is a religion of peace. Now, this is my core argument or the point that I've tried to make in the book. The Muslims who think violence shouldn't be meted out or terror is not required, they say Islam does not prescribe terror. Somehow they try to argue or claim or convince that Islam is a religion of peace. But if you look at the history right from the days of the Prophet, all their caliphates, and what has happened until in Turkey, Mustafa Kemal
Yeah.
uh, stopped the caliphate. Until then, there have been massacres only throughout. So I cannot talk to them on this philosophical aspect. I just cannot say because the biggest thing is okay, they are admitting that all these happened, but those who are doing it are not true Muslims. True Muslims will only like to want peace. Now I was satisfied that okay, at least he is making this point. I cannot expect him to be very honest or go into the logical reasoning, which is completely unexpected. They are not supposed to question. They cannot open up their conscience or
Absolutely.
yeah, dive into it and see what is happening. No, they cannot do anything. This has been told you are going to do this. Now, this is true. He's the only God. He's the only person. So there's no rational argument which is possible. So without all these, being addressed, I don't think justice can be so easily done because it has to come up from within them. There has to be an apology. There has to be a remorse. Without all that, how do we define justice? How do we think?
Yeah, I mean, if you see, for example, how justice has come about, it is because the survivors have spoken up. Justice never comes up from the side of perpetrators. Justice is political. Justice is also to do with power. When victims, when survivors, they speak up collectively, that is when they force perpetrators to speak about what they have done. It does not come easily anywhere. I mean, if you see the example of Germans, they would not have apologized or did all this until and unless the Jews and the rest of the world showed a mirror to them as to what they have done. It would not have come by itself.
Hmm. Hmm.
That mirror is very necessary. if you see, perpetrators always try to hide, they always try to suppress. And this is true with perpetrators everywhere, right? Our goal is to see that we become strong, we become collective, and force the world to acknowledge that what really happened on that day, which was being prepared for decades, for centuries. I feel that we have not done that task enough, and we cannot ask for justice. Justice is demanded. In fact, I would go ahead and say justice is snatched, because nobody gives it freely. Nobody gives it, without your demanding it. So we have to rise and demand justice for ourselves. Without that, that will not happen. And that will only happen through the power of the pen. It will only happen through books. It will not happen by shouting in television studios. It will happen when ordinary people like you and me, everywhere, in every corner, they start reading about what happened. It's the power of the pen that will make justice possible. And I think the role of the perpetrator, whether he agrees or whether there is any change of conscience here or not, is irrelevant. I don't think that's even matters. But what is important is that justice has to be seen from the side of survivors as to what they need to do and how they need to protest. And our books are books of protest. We are talking about something that someone somewhere is trying to hide. And that is what we have to carry on doing. And that is what we have to carry on going in our task. So that is what I would like to end on that note. And I think we are already finishing with our time. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And I hope more and more people read your book, because the psychological insight that you bring in, it's going to be very interesting, and it's going to give a different understanding altogether, because we look at it from a superficial way. But when you delve into the minds, into the depth of the minds, I think there's a whole new world that opens up. So, as you rightly said, more and more people should be reading our books, and that's how the story will be told better to a wider mass. Yeah.
Right, Samana. So with that, we come to an end, and I would like to thank you and the Garuda Prakashan and everyone who's associated, who's watching us. And there are no questions, so I hope that we have been able to answer what people probably may have come with expectations. So I'm glad about it, and with that, we can, close the program. So I'm asking the administrator, so is our time over or is it still there? Okay, I think it must be over. So therefore, and there. So with that, we leave. Namaskar, and
Namaste.
thank
Thank
you
you
very
so
much.
much. Yeah.